Welcome to the Clearwater Police Department's Command and Control Training Overview. Today, we will discuss the purpose and proper application of setting a perimeter on a residence, practical communication of priority information, such as the location of personnel on scene, the priorities of life, also referred to as safety priorities, threat assessment, and target identification. Command and control. In the event of a confirmed armed barricaded subject, a burglary in progress, a subject fleeing on foot from a vehicle stop, and other similar calls, the process known as command and control will be established. Command and control is the exercise of authority and direction by a properly designated commanding officer. Command and control is the intelligent arrangement of personnel, equipment, and communications employed by the officers involved in the planning, direction, and coordination of all resources available for the purpose of accomplishing the objective. It is important to note, Clearwater Police Department Policy 12.9 Command Protocol reads, "Under normal operating conditions, the highest-ranking member present shall assume command of any given situation. Supervisors shall be held accountable for the performance of members under their immediate control." Clearwater Police Department Policy 12.9b reads, "Unless designated as incident commander through an approved incident action plan, when personnel from two or more divisions or components are engaged in a single operation, the ranking on-scene supervisor from the division or component initiating the operation should take command. The on-scene supervisor may relinquish command to a supervisor from another division or component in furtherance of the operation." The expedient initiation of command and control is of paramount importance. The following are the essential components of command and control. Setting perimeter and communicating positions. When responding to an event, such as an armed barricaded subject, a burglary in progress, a subject fleeing on foot from a vehicle stop, and similar type calls, units should immediately begin formulating a plan centered around how they will contain the subject. At the same time, a primary unit should be identified to make contact with the complainant, victim, or witness to confirm or establish the validity of our lawful relationship with the location and identify any known charges related to the call. Note: at this time, the armored van should be en route to the event location, and any SWAT or CNT personnel on duty should respond to assist. When arriving in the area, personnel should be sure to position vehicles in a manner to allow other emergency equipment and vehicles to easily access the location. Stage Clearwater Fire and Rescue paramedics and identify a landing zone for potential helicopter evacuation. Supervisors should identify a temporary command post away from the scene and begin assigning positions for units. Supervisors will utilize their whiteboard and computer to facilitate this important component of the event rollout. Supervisors will designate a staging area for the deployment of officers. This designated staging will help eliminate officers self-deploying. Determine a perimeter location and select a position, preferably at opposing corners, that provides hard cover and one that is not easily seen from the subject's vantage point.
Mitchell to command. I'm going to be on the 2-3 corner, approximately 30 yards to the southwest of the target location. I'll be behind the greenhouse.
Perimeter units must announce their exact location for the safety of all personnel on scene. Remember, do not compress or break cover. Additionally, always be aware of your backstop and always maintain light and noise discipline so as not to compromise your position.
Kazop to command. I've got the 3-4 corner. I'm approximately 40 yards northwest of the location, behind a white and blue house.
Communicate your perimeter location via the radio to dispatch and other responding units. If you relocate to another location, immediately update your location via the radio. Alternative perimeter location designators. When establishing a perimeter position, units will utilize numeric positional designators 1, 2, 3, and 4 and announce their respective locations. When utilizing numeric positional designators, the front of the residence, which is most commonly indicated by the location of the mailbox, will be the one side of the structure, and in a clockwise manner you will enumerate the 2-side, 3-side, and 4-side. For example, officers might say, "I am on the 1-2 corner of the structure." Utilizing numeric positional designators allows all parties involved to rapidly understand the location of all personnel on scene. Evaluate the need for neighbor evacuation. Contact the Real-Time Operations Center and request a biosheet and drone for aerial coverage. If possible, select a position on opposing corners of the structure to reduce the likelihood of crossfire. Once containment is established, the supervisor should verify name and location of perimeter units and annotate this information on the whiteboard. Personnel will utilize their last name to identify themselves. This helps alleviate any confusion and will aid in the appropriate use of assets on scene. Supervisors should designate an officer with a rifle to be deployed for the purpose of overwatch and document his or her position on the whiteboard. As officers begin to arrive into the area and the armored van arrives on scene, an immediate reaction team, or IRT, receiving team should be established. Shield, lethal, less lethal, hands and commands, and medical. It is recommended to utilize a crisis negotiation team, or CNT, officer to drive the armored van so that he or she may serve dual functions of driving and possibly communicating with the subject. Supervisors on scene should verify that all of the initial rollout is set and in place by verbally conducting a roll call over the air. Once command and control is set, the supervisors on scene will identify personnel, ideally a CNT member, to attempt contact over the phone. Once the subject agrees to surrender, the personnel in contact with the subject will coordinate the surrender, maximizing the safety of the officers and the subject. During the surrender, officers will not approach the subject, but will instead have the subject safely approach officers who will remain behind hard cover. The subject will be instructed to come back to the armored van or point of cover. Additional considerations and resources. Make all appropriate notifications. Confirm vehicle and pedestrian traffic control. Other agencies' specialized equipment, such as the Eagle, the Rook, the Bearcat, and other such tools. Powerful mobile light sources. Medical kit and additional tourniquets. 40mm single launcher. Pepper ball. SWAT sniper deployment. And K9 units. Safety priorities. Safety priorities are a decision-making process which provide the framework for making tactically sound decisions, utilizing objective criteria based on an individual's current or likely risk of suffering serious bodily injury or death, and his or her direct ability to remove himself or herself from that danger. The priorities are as follows: hostages and victims, innocent civilians, law enforcement, and suspects who have the most control. Those exposed to the greatest potential of injury with the least ability to escape the situation are placed at the top of the priorities. For instance, a hostage is at grave danger of injury when held against his or her will with little ability to control the situation. At the other end of the continuum is the suspect, who has little threat of injury and absolute control over the situation. The safety priorities value all life, and the sole intent is to assist law enforcement in making tactical decisions to assist in saving lives. Target identification. The value of human life is immeasurable in our society. Police officers have been delegated the responsibility to protect life and property and apprehend criminal offenders. The protection of life must always take priority over all else. Therefore, the highest degree of target discrimination must be applied at all times, and we must be absolutely certain in our threat identification and the subsequent force used to address that threat. Clearwater Police Policy 102.50, Use of Firearms. The firing of a firearm in the direction of any person or any occupied vehicle shall be considered as deadly force and shall comply with the provisions of this policy. Officers shall exercise the utmost care and precaution in the handling, use, and maintenance of firearms. The use of firearms shall comply with the restrictions in this order. The 4 primary rules of firearm safety. Always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction and never point the muzzle of your weapon at anything you do not intend to destroy. Treat all weapons as if they are loaded at all times. Keep your finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until you are ready to fire. Always be sure of your target and what is beyond it. The role of strategic disengagement. Clearwater Police Policy 34.13, Strategic Disengagement. Based on the preservation of life philosophy, these types of circumstances should be carefully evaluated for strategic disengagement to prevent an escalation that could produce a harmful outcome to the individual and/or officers. The decision to strategically disengage is based on the totality of the circumstances and applies only to situations involving contained or barricaded suicidal subjects who have not committed a crime and are not a threat to other people. Direct fire engagement, also referred to as suppression fire. Direct fire engagement is defined as directly firing upon a known deadly threat with the intent to engage that threat with deadly force. It is imperative that we understand the application of direct fire engagement or suppression fire is a use of deadly force. As such, all considerations in General Order 102 must be applied. Personnel must understand the difference between indiscriminately discharging your firearm at an unidentified target and direct fire engagement. When applying the principle of direct fire engagement, officers should understand the following. Target identification is paramount. You must be aware of the location of all innocent parties to ensure they will not be unintentionally injured or killed. You must know your backstop and what is beyond it, as rounds can over-penetrate. You must control your rate of fire to avoid target fixation and expending more rounds than is absolutely necessary. Place rounds where the suspect is most reasonably believed to be located. For example, if officers are attempting to rescue an injured citizen or officer who is pinned down by gunfire and the shooter is engaging officers from the threshold of a doorway, the officer's primary objective will be to neutralize the threat as soon as possible. However, if direct fire engagement is a tactically sound option, the officer should engage the frame of a door with a smooth and continuous rate of fire to suppress the threat and effect the rescue. Clearwater Police Policy 102.30, Deadly Force. The value of human life is immeasurable in our society. Police officers have been delegated the responsibility to protect life and property and apprehend criminal offenders. The protection of life must always take priority over the apprehension of criminal offenders and the protection of property. The officer's responsibility for protecting life must include his or her own. An officer of the Clearwater Police Department may use deadly force only as a last resort after all reasonably available lesser efforts have failed, when there is a reasonable belief that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to the officer or another person, or effect the capture or prevent the escape of a person who has committed a felony which involved the use or threatened use of deadly force and whose freedom is reasonably believed to represent an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to the officer or other people. No distinction shall be made relative to the age of the intended target of deadly force. Self-defense, defense of others in the presence of an imminent threat to public safety shall be the only guidelines for employing deadly force. If feasible, some warning must be given before deadly force is used to include a verbal warning before shooting when appropriate. Clearwater Police Policy 102.31, Restrictions on the Use of Deadly Force. The use of a firearm or other means of deadly force shall not be permitted in the following circumstances: to fire warning shots when it appears likely that an innocent person may be injured; to apprehend suspects who have committed misdemeanors or non-violent felonies; to apprehend suspects who have committed a violent felony unless there is an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to the officer or other person if the suspect is not immediately apprehended. Officers should not discharge a firearm at or from a moving vehicle except as the ultimate measure of self-defense or defense of another when the suspect is using deadly force. Thank you very much for your time. Be safe.